acknowledge that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which we are located today. This area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that our watershed forms a part of the treaty and traditional territory of the Southeastern Anishinaabe. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we live and work to honor this legacy. We commit to being stewards of the natural environment and undertake to have a relationship of respect with our treaty partners. So, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Jerry, Priya, all in favor? Carried, great. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? None seen. Okay, moving on to 3, approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Jerry and Eric, all in favor? Great, carried. And is there any business arising from the minutes? Okay, none seen. And we have no deputations. So we're on to number 6, presentations and applicable action items. Nogis Creek and Mishkwawa ZB River floodplain mapping studies presentation. And maybe Peter can tell me how that's pronounced.
I don't. I got a thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can put that. Just as a little bit of an intro, Galen Yerix, he's our floodplain mapping and GIS technician, works under Matt Mantle, who's been supporting for this project. So it's great to have Galen with us. He's been doing floodplain mapping since the very early days of our floodplain mapping. So he's very familiar now with the process and all of the federal programs that support it. They have a bunch of requirements. So he's been extremely valuable resource in doing this, and of course he knows how to use all the fancy equipment as well. So great to have Galen here to run through some of these projects.
Take it away, Galen.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. I look forward to been looking forward to presenting this information to you all, especially you, Peter. And no. There we go. Okay. So for those of you who don't know what a floodplain is, I'm assuming everybody here does, but anyway, it's just an area adjoining a watercourse or lake which has been or may be subject to flooding hazard during a period of high water. So the edges of the creek or water body. And the importance of floodplain mapping. So this assists with the development of emergency management plans for the municipalities. And it also identifies areas of concern, which also helps us identify projects where we can get floodplain mapping that doesn't exist or if it needs to be updated. It also informs municipal staff, conservation authority staff, and the public where floodplains exist and provides associated flood elevations to help with helps with development, essentially. Anyway, it also protects people and property from death and damage by regulating existing and future development using accurate and defensible data. And another point that's not on there, it also saves landowners money, because if they need a flood study done on their property, because if they're in the floodplain, then if we have the information already available, then we can.
That's an important point.
Yeah. So, and as you know, floodplain mapping studies cost thousands of dollars. So. Okay, so with floodplain mapping, we are trying to avoid these types of things. And this type of development has existed throughout our watershed. There's a number of different examples. Even emergency services have been built within floodplains. And I think that particular one in Minden has been moved since. But you see there's Shadow Lake, Sinister Creek, and Burnt River. And I'm sure you're well aware of the flooding that happens in Burnt River. Okay, so a little down to the nitty-gritty of the detail that goes into floodplain mapping. So this is a list of existing or just data that we put into the model. So essentially, we use a computer model, hydraulic and hydrologic model to create the floodplain, or at least delineate where the floodplain is. And the more information you put into the computer model, the better the information it's going to spit out. So these are a list of some key points or key layers that we put into the model. And one of the big ones is LiDAR data. Now, with the Trent Lakes projects, we were able to use LiDAR data acquisition from Peterborough County, which was done through a MAFRA, which saved the project hundreds of thousands of dollars because we didn't have to fly it ourselves. So it's good too for when you're proposing a project, because then that number isn't really high. So we were lucky to get it through the PIM funding, which is a federal grant program, which is a 50-50 cost share. So other information that is kind of key, if we have it, would be like historic flow data as well as high water data. And that information helps calibrate the model because you have kind of existing information on kind of where water will go on the landscape based on volume and your high water marks. So they can compare it based on the storms that happen if we have that data. If we don't, there's standards and procedures that they go through in order to make sure that it's kind of accounted for, or at least reiterated in the technical report that's produced at the end of this. Okay, so back to LiDAR, just in case you don't know what LiDAR is. So LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging technology. So essentially it's a laser that's shot from a plane, and it gives us a digital representation of the topography of the land. And it is the base for floodplain mapping. So then we get literally an accurate representation of what goes on. And I think the accuracy is around like 3, 4, 5 points per square meter. And it's all elevation and it's tied to like your lat longs or northings, eastings as well. So what it looks like when we get it, or what it looks like when they actually get it is let's call it point cloud. So you can actually see where all like the power lines and forests are. They strip it down, or either we strip it down or the government, wherever we get it from, strips it down to what it looks like on the right, top right. And then there we go. Okay. So key point is that this laser bounces off of water. So this is where I come in. I am in the creek, and I take a survey points of cross sections throughout the whole water course. And that gives you essentially the bottom of the stream channel, which is essentially the missing information for the model. So with Mississaugas and Nogies Creek, we did it by foot, canoe, and boat because there's some deeper areas in there and some less accessible through boat launch, especially in Mississaugas. So it was a cool project to work on and get all that data. And then, okay, on to the modeling. So for this particular project, we hired Water's Edge consultants to do the actual modeling for the project. So all the data that we collected, as well as the background information that I listed earlier, I compiled and then gave it to Water's Edge, and they were able to do the modeling. So again, I wrote this down to make sure I get it right. So the hydraulic modeling is it calculates water levels along with river flows, where the hydrologic modeling estimates the range of potential water flow. So if all that encompassed together, you essentially figure out where the water is going to go on the landscape in a big storm event. So I'm just going to, okay, now we're going to go back up. Okay, so you've all heard of the 100-year event, I'm sure. And you've maybe heard of the Timmins event and then Hurricane Hazel. So those are essentially provincially standard storms with a known amount of volume over time. And they use those as standards for floodplain mapping. And though that information is put into the model and essentially where the line line ends up delineating based on, for our area, it's Timmins or 100-year, then whichever one's the higher of the two is what we go with for regulatory purposes. Hurricane Hazel is used in Southern Ontario, so our best representation is Timmins or the 100-year. Okay. So I went through that quickly. If you have any questions, just let me know. Yeah.
Do you want the questions on them at the end?
Would you prefer?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You just.
No, it makes sense to do it while
I
it's.
said-
Yeah.
I said one quick question.
Yeah.
Floodgate.
It's a lot of information, so I just want to make sure I can answer questions.
For you, Madam Chair, just two quick questions. Is this information shared with the fire chief? He's our emergency, he represents, like, so.
For Trent Lakes, it will be, and then the other ones, I believe, have been, because the city has copy, so they'll have that
I
information.
assume so.
Yeah.
I'm just curious myself as a counselor.
Yeah,
That instantly gets shared with whoever the emergency.
yeah, it's on our website, and yeah, the city, we send it over to the city planning department, so we can make sure that it at least gets directly to them in the future, so, but yeah.
Curious.
In Trent Lakes, though.
Yeah, I
This was
for sure.
okay.
I just wonder, just relatively speaking, for
Yeah,
us, with
yeah.
floodplain mapping in general, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it really is, the hydraulic model is really the point,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It's giving you the heads up on. The only other question I had was plane costs. So I don't remember seeing in the budget, because that's expensive.
yep,
Plane fuel is very expensive. So is that a cost that we see in the Conservation Authority budget?
So for this particular one, I believe it was part of the scoop exercise, if I remember it, or is it?
this is the MAFRA.
Hero County
Yeah.
itself. So there's different initiatives that kind of go on. We did support one that is tied to our rights mapping. And it uses LiDAR as well, and it was part of a big Southern Ontario, or South Central Ontario initiative called Scoop. So that gives ortho imagery and also did LiDAR this time. This one was actually one that was flown several years prior, which was done by OMAFRA. And it was done for the whole of Peterborough County. So that information was input into this. We do estimate in the budget that goes forward to the feds, the cost of that acquisition.
And what's good with the federal funding is that it's cost sharing. So the municipality will front half the funds and then the federal government will front the rest. And what an initiative that the provincial government's been doing is that they've been trying to fly LiDAR throughout the populated areas through Ontario, Central Ontario, and Kawartha Lakes was done last year. So now we have updated floodplain mapping for our regs, or not floodplain mapping, sorry, LiDAR information for our regs, and it'll help just with a lot of information and save us money if we want to do floodplain mapping within City of Kawartha Lakes watershed.
Right.
Thank you.
When you're through the chair, so when you're doing the actual tracking of the bottom of the water.
Yeah.
Do you ever get the chance to use the surface and reference it back to the computer program that generates the pictures to see the accuracy of that?
So like the surface of the water itself,
Well,
or?
'cause you're getting basically a height off the LiDAR, right? Like the.
Yeah, so
How does that compare to when you're trying to track the bottom of the water course?
So it's pretty seamless, so they're able to pick out kind of where they stop using the LiDAR and then insert the information from the bottom. The water itself in the creek changes obviously seasonally, so it doesn't really matter, but what they do is they run storm situations, so there's like a 1 year, 5 year, 10, 20, and so on and so forth, up to the 100 and Timmins, and then now they're even incorporating climate change to have like the 500,000 year. And it's essentially what they're doing is they're calculating the capacity of the stream channel to hold that much water. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's any chance to check the accuracy of one against the other.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's the value of having historic.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Because those are actual historic water levels related to the creek and the drainage area, everything coming to it. And hopefully a recording of how much rainfall actually fell. So between the two, that kind of information is what you use. Sometimes what we actually want for Galen when he's going out, part of it's health and safety, is we actually don't want a whole lot of water in the water course because it's just hard to navigate. So yeah, low water is actually better for Galen. But those historic water levels, especially if we have a gauged area like Mariposa Brook, for instance, we're able to use those water levels and plug it into those models.
Yeah, and in Nogies, we did have some historic data. There was a flow level gauge on Nogies Creek, so we were able to put that information into the modeling. And then on Burnt River, there's like 100-year data set that we're able to use to help calibrate. Plus, when we had the major flood events in 2013, 17, and 19, I took high water marks during those events, so they know how much rain we got, how big the storm was. Then we can compare based on those high water marks if the model is actually spitting out the right information.
Through the chair, just follow up on that.
Yeah.
So sometimes the high water is caused by damming downstream of ice not moving. So
Right.
how does that get factored in to give you a more precise idea of what's happening?
We do a lot of high water marks, so we'll take a bunch of them throughout the whole system. And if it's ice jam related, I don't know, we haven't really run into that situation where we've taken points with ice jam stuff, but
Okay, carry on.
yeah, it's great questions. Okay, just to give a perspective on Nogies Creek, so the top, or sorry, on the right side is like the top end of Nogies Creek, so it's a massive wetland, Bass Lake wetland, flows downstream. It's a huge wetland complex that comes down, and then we have a really kind of, I guess, rocky, so it's faster moving current, and then as you go down to the bottom left, that's where we took the boat in
Beautiful.
from, I guess the Nogies Creek launch down off of 36. And we took our boat in with a giant pole and put the pole, or attach the GPS to it, and then put the pole in, and we're able to take points all the way across. And then we're into the mapping. So this is Nogies Creek at the north end. So there's the wetland and lake I was talking about. We're able to actually get, there's a past study done too on Nogies Creek. And we were able to extend the study, I think it was like 1.2 kilometers past this, which is good. So it gives us more information. If you have any questions afterwards, this is really small about what's on the map, I'm happy to answer them as well for them. So we're moving down the system at the bottom, and there's Tully's Road Bridge. And then down to the bottom end where there's Highway 36, which drains into Pigeon Lake. So that red area is the important area because that's where it shows kind of where that floodplain is. And then the bubbles on the side are the actual elevation to relate to.
Through the chair, so who did the previous study?
I believe it was M&R in 1988. Yeah.
So I have a question to the
Yep.
Where the floodplain is very close to the river and in other places where it goes far away, does it go further? Is the floodplain bigger because the land is going down like this and it's holding the water? It's
Yeah.
really about
It's really hard to see, but there's contours on the map with the labeled elevation. So yeah, you'll be able to see essentially a decrease in elevations. The water's kind of channeling towards the low point and then coming back around. Yeah.
and then on the, like, where it's really thin and close to the river, let's say on the left up there, presumably there's, the land is going up like this and it doesn't have the opportunity to flood.
To spread out.
All about elevation.
Yeah, it's all, yeah, exactly. It's big time. So, and your bridges, so we also, sorry, I left this, so it was important. We survey the bridges and culverts that are directly on the main channel. So those act as pinch points. So those will hold water back and then eventually it'll top and then come down. But that's calculated within the model as well. So I need to survey essentially the guardrails, the top of the bridge, the openings of the bridge or culvert, whatever it is, and then provide that information to the modelers because it's key for calculating where it'll go.
Okay.
Okay, so now on to Miskuzibi. This is a pleasant surprise if you want to take a Saturday morning and take your canoe down up on Highway 36. It's absolutely gorgeous. You can only go to a certain point because of water levels, but it's beautiful through there and the people are really nice. But you can see the water levels have dropped quite a bit. It changed significantly for the I don't know, it was like four weeks that we were out there. We could canoe at some point on the right-hand side, but at some point we ended up having to walk because the water levels dropped. And There's the start of the mapping, so that's up at Highway 36 again. Big wetland complex above, forested, and then it comes back through, and there's a lot of, these were kind of picked because there's a lot of development on either side through cottages and homes. There's about between 170 to 200 on both projects, actually, that will be impacted by the
And if
potential
you
flooding.
want to take your canoe, you could take it up or a kayak up to the fish sanctuary, which isn't part of this study, but it's that big water body. It's absolutely beautiful. It's easy to access because there's an old M&R launch there. So it's,
Oh, yeah, I know, on Nogies,
yeah,
Nogies,
but well, it's at the end.
right, yep.
So it's called, and there are no, boats or motors, and it's heaven on earth, it really is.
Yeah. And then Miskozivi drains into Little Bald Lake, which we don't get to talk about much here. So I think that's the last one.
Right.
Yep, Priya?
Thank you, three. Did you take the photos of the rivers?
Yeah.
All of them?
Yeah, so every time we take a cross section, we take a photo of upstream and downstream, and that gives the modelers a perspective of like what the shoreline looks like. So they'll look at like land use and different things and like essentially give them mathematical coefficients to help the model figure out what the landscape's made of. So yeah, we have to take photos and then put that all together and then provide that to them as well.
They are astonishingly beautiful, those photos.
It helps when the landscape is nice too.
If
They look like painted.
I wouldn't go this time of year, though. I'm sure the bugs are pretty bad, eh, Peter?
We lucked out in
Not as bad as in now,
Okay. I'm just saying.
Isn't that the worst?
way worse.
Mm. Okay, all righty. So any other questions? Can I have a motion to receive Galen's presentation? Jerry and, oh my gosh, Eric. I'm looking at Tracy and Tracy's not here.
Well, I am here, but I'm up here.
All in favor? Carrie. Yeah, she is on the screen. Welcome, Tracy.
Even when Tracy's not here.
That's right.
we're talking about
There you go. Yeah, okay.
it as well.
And Lloyd, sorry, Lloyd. We just can't see everybody from back here. Hello.
All right.
Okay, so we're at 6.1.1.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
And again,
thank you.
reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Okay. So we're at Matt.
Sure.
Yeah,
As Galen just presented, the one thing we're actually seeking that the presentation and the accompanying studies we received. And endorsed to. Yeah, and endorsed.
okay.
Hang on, sorry. excuse me.
Sure.
Are we talking about
Priya?
6.2.1?
6.1.
No, 6.1.1. So
That,
it's Nogies Creek
Oh, what we
floodplain
just-
mapping study report.
the one we just saw?
Yeah, we just had the presentation, but
Okay, I get it.
yeah, okay. Jerry? Absolutely. Priya, second. Any questions? All in favor? Carried, great. Okay, we're on to 6.2 regulation mapping update presentation. Matt? Yeah.
Let's see. Well. Alrighty. Well, thank you for coming and watching this presentation. This is all our mapping updates that are occurring due to the regulation updates and required data such as LiDAR and engineering studies. One of them being that Galen just presented for Trent Lakes. As outlined on this slide, this presentation will focus on highlighting the key differences in our regulation mapping due to legislative amendments and improved data. Oops. With regard to the legislative changes, the reduction from the 120-meter buffer to the standard 30-meter buffer is actually the only change that is required by
Could you just speak up a little
Yep,
louder?
yes,
Thank
sorry.
you.
As I was saying, the reduction is the only legislative requirement from the reg changes. And the rest of the presentation is going to be showing the changes due to our improved data acquisition through LiDAR and, like I said, the engineering studies. For context, with the changes of the regulation due to the legislation changes, the gray area represents the boundary of the wetland. The purple area is the new regulation limits of the 30 meters, and the pink area is the old regulation of 120 meters around a wetland that was greater than 2 hectares. As you can see, that it has a significant impact on our wetland regulation. However, higher resolution data seems to compensate a little bit for the areas lost.
So, could you explain that, please, what that means? How does a higher resolution?
We have greater data, so we're able, as you'll see through the presentation,
Okay.
I'll explain what each layer is and how they're the better data allowed us to assess situations such as steep slopes, which we weren't able to do very clearly before. The 100-year mapping layer also improves from this because now we know where those elevations are. Like what Galen was saying for the last presentation, we just know where the water can go now more accurately than we did previously. So that helped us pick those cooling areas like you were curious about earlier.
Thank you.
No problem. Oops. As I was saying earlier, since we're required to update the regulation mapping, we're using this opportunity to include updates resulting from the improved data and like I said, using engineering and LiDAR. The regulation components that have been included in the update are the 100-year floodplain for major water bodies such as Folsom Lake, the inclusion of naturally formed unstable slopes, meander belt, and additionally the detailed engineered flood studies. As represented in purple within this image, the floodplain extends from the water body, in this case Cameron Lake, to the flood elevation of 255.7, which is our historic flood elevation that we regulate. And then there's an additional 15-meter buffer that extends inland from the flood elevation, which comprises our flood regulation area that then gets imposed on the other layers eventually. So we take each component and then we compile them together to get the full regulated area within our watershed. This slide is showing the unstable slope hazard, which we created using the elevation data. That has a vertical rise of 1 meter over 3 meters. So sorry, vertical rise of 1 meter and then a 3-meter horizontal. So any stone slope that is steeper than that, we generally, for soils of general type, we regulate that. And then for sandy and organic soils, we regulate for 1 to 5, which is 1 vertical elevation change, like 1 meter elevation over 5 meter vertical change. These slopes, as I said before, are focused on naturally occurring features that have a steeper slope and are greater than 2 meters rise. Our minimum threshold is 2 meters and below we don't regulate, but greater than 2 meters in total of the hill. So we don't want to be regulating mounds and things like that are less than 2 meters. So okay, another component of erosion hazards is karst, which is a representation of unstable bedrock. And what karst is the presence of fractures, caves, cavities in sedimentary rocks such as dolomite or limestone. It is formed by a chemical reaction of water seeping through cracks in rock and dissolving the rock as it passes through. A good example of this is at the bottom of the here is the Onleys Hole, which is in the Municipality of Trent Lakes near Novice Creek. And slide. We did not include this for our updated mapping, as the data is very difficult to verify without performing significant investigation work and represents a small portion of the watershed. However, we are working on understanding this layer better and may include this in future updates. Yes, we do.
Is that the area that's known as Dewfleet Caves?
Yes.
Yep.
I was gonna ask that too, Peter.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Sorry, I'm not sure if this is the right moment. I mean, are we saying that with the regulation, the only really one we're forced to do is around the wetlands from 120 to 30? And in this, we lost, with the new mapping, 32,495
Hectares?
hectares,
Yeah.
okay. But at the same time, we're looking at the 100-year level, the meander belt, erosion, et cetera, and we're adding in hectares. But those aren't part of the regulation you mean, so so these areas that were not formerly regulated.
No, they were regulated through
Yeah.
text-based only, in some cases.
Okay.
And our data acquisition has given us the ability to update our mapping to improve the quality of our mapping, and not just base it fully on the text, but also.
Okay, so,
visual representation.
okay, but if we do focus on, I would like to just ask a question about the wetlands regulation, where we lost 32,495 hectares. Where is the science on that? Who did the science on whether or not it's okay to eliminate those, to go from 120 to 30 meters? And who did the science? And then what is kind of the feedback from the conservation authorities to the province on?
That's the question.
Well, I know, because we're talking about all the bodies, our stakeholder groups, and we're basically focusing on the development industry. So
Yeah.
we're just 32,400 hectares, but we don't know the science on it. That we're saying that our main stakeholders are not the public or environmental groups, but the development industry. This is almost like a handover.
Yeah.
It feels like, and I just don't know. I don't know what the conservation authorities are saying to the province, or I don't know, what the public is understanding about this, but I feel
Conservation Ontario, there were a bunch of letters there going through some of that.
And
Yeah,
through Madam Chair, I can probably talk to a bunch of that, which is, and maybe I'll just like back out a little bit in history and maybe perspective. So we are always updating our regulation base. It's been in place since 1988. There was a regulation change that occurred. It was the Red Tape Reduction Act in 2006, I believe. And as a result of those efforts, we were able to update our mapping to the most current information available. At that point in time, we had a choice of 30 meters around wetlands or 120 meters around wetlands greater than 2 hectares in size. So there was a choice of play at that point in time. Some CAs went with 30. We decided to go with 120. And in the most recent updates, the province, which there was consultation on, said that they were looking to reduce it.
consultation from the province.
Yes, on the
With CA?
proposed, in general, it was posted on the Environmental Registry of Ontario. So we did put comments in, and in the end, the comments were received by the province and they kept with the 30. So they took away the option for 120 is really what occurred. The science, you'd have to ask them.
yeah.
But what's our understanding of the science?
I think our understanding of the science in a general, kind of point, if I was to look at the types of applications we receive, is that for very large, types of development, the 120 makes a lot of sense. For some of the smaller ones, maybe less. The risk is less, is going to be less. There's less exposed soils, subdivision going in, if you're 120 meters away from a wetland. There could be some significant runoff. We've seen a couple of instances in our history where one of them was, for instance, a solar park was actually outside of 120, but impacted through the right area and actually into the feature itself. So you could make an argument for a little bit more. You can make an argument for a little bit less. My preferred scenario probably would be, can there be a hybrid that could be struck, or or
Yeah,
the option
depends
of
on the
120.
development. Yeah,
But the province is the one that holds the regulation, and they are the ones that set the direction. So
No, I know,
So, yeah.
I thoroughly understand that the province is setting the direction, but it's our job to protect the wetlands and
Yeah.
conservation, and I just wonder, what's our idea of the science, sort of even more specifically, do we or do other close conservation authorities have like sort of more in-depth reports on a subdivision versus a smaller development and the distance from wetlands? Because this, to me, just doesn't, I'm very uncomfortable with this general huge reduction, right, in Kawartha Lakes.
I think most people are.
I think, exactly.
That's one of the crux of
But
all the
that's not what's
changes.
in the
Yeah.
air, we're not hearing that, we're not doing anything about it, we're.
Yeah, Eric,
Sorry.
I think we kind of did. I mean, it was the,
Yeah.
and not successfully, but
Yeah.
the day after the election
yeah,
was the day this went through.
exactly.
And, or the day before, it was one of the two.
Yeah,
There was a huge outcry. and
We
I
brought
was
it to
part of
council.
it. I was right at council in this.
I remember that too.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'm not saying that that's okay or whatever, but there really was a lot of,
pushback.
front page Toronto
But
Star.
that's it, that was it.
It's legislation that went through. Bill home faster, and the bill went, it went through. So I just acknowledging that I do remember
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
6 weeks
No, I
of
do remember
rallies
that
and all,
too.
and this was at the forefront.
Yeah.
But now it's finally come to this where we have the mapping, we have to make it public, we have to share it with developers. And obviously we should share it with more than, like with every state, figure out who our stakeholders really are, which is the public.
yeah, and that's actually something that is actually part of the when we get to the report, that's part of the resolution. And actually something that has been incorporated into the legislation as well, which is public notification of changes. In this case, very specific to a significant change. So we will be sending out a letter to municipalities. And a lot of that focus will be on the staff that actually use it. So planning, building departments, public works, and roads. So we'll be sending out notices that way, but also stakeholders and then general public. So this will be posted on our website for 30 days. So we can bring it back in June and receive any comments. We do plan on a post as well. So yeah, public notification for a change as significant as this, altogether, which is part of the reason why we want to do it all together. So we didn't have to have multiple sessions. Just better do all in one while we have the new LiDAR data and the regs changed.
Okay, yeah, Laura?
Sorry for such a big interruption.
That's okay.
Sorry, that's through you, Madam Chair, to just on the 120 to 30 change there. This came up at a meeting I had recently with the planning department, and they were presenting something on the ADUs. From the areas that we're gonna allow ADUs in. Some of your reports call them additional residential unit, we call them additional dwelling units. And I asked if they'd taken into account the fact that the buffer zone has been reduced to 30 meters from 120. And their reply to me was, we still have to do the 120. It's just the conservation authorities can't do it anymore. We have to do it through peer review and outside sources.
Yeah,
I should clarify that.
That's true.
As well. Through you, Madam Chair, sorry, Harold. It's a very important point. There's a distinction between our regulation, 30 meters, and Planning Act and the requirements to protect on natural heritage.
Yeah.
So this is the hazard side. There's still a requirement in the Planning Act for the heritage side. And that would be the 120 meters around significant wetlands, PSWs.
You mean natural heritage features?
The natural heritage features, yeah, there's a distinction between the two.
Municipality has to do
That
it.
was my second question through you, Madam Chair. What is I couldn't get a definition. What was the difference between hazard lands and natural heritage features? Is there a difference?
Yes, there's a huge difference.
Okay.
Yes, so through you, Madam Chair, this is the kind of the crux of what we do, so it's really important. All of the stuff that Matt's talking about, those are the hazards. So meander belt is tied with changes in the river over time. So as it meanders, it'll actually incise different areas, and then you'll end up with a swath being the area of hazard. Floodplains, too much water in one area, floods out, that's the natural hazard. Slopes eroding over time, that's a hazard. On the Great Lakes, you have dynamic beaches, which really erode certain sections and deposit in others. So that's a hazard. What else we have? Wetlands is really the holding capacity, so a bit of floodplain and organic soils. So the unstable soil portion of the reg. So those are all the natural hazards are things that could cause problems on that end. The heritage side deals with all the bugs, bees, and
Critters,
mice
all the critters.
side of things. So that's where it starts to look at things like what kind of species are in those areas, any significant species of concern that need protecting, is the overall ecological function of a wetland versus the hazard part, which is the flood capacity side of things. And what else is in the heritage? Yeah, woodlots, it's all the ecological integrity components.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, we have Director Randall's.
Sure. Go ahead, Lloyd.
Yeah, thanks. So just going back to the public consultation thing. Would making interested reporters become aware of the changes and specifically handing them maps to take a look at be considered part of informing the public?
Yeah, is that what you're saying? Yeah, I think it's gonna be.
I think a media outreach strategy might be worthwhile in this case.
I was thinking the same.
Yeah. That's when you call them in. Yeah.
So it's a yes?
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Jerry?
Through the chair to Matt, I just thinking in my head here. So going forward 50 years, and we don't have anything that correlates to what happened, like say Eric Hazel back in 54. What happens to the 100-year mark? Like what does it stay in place even though it's way past 100 years, or does it become a new standard, a new threshold, a new whatever?
So, through you, Madam Chair, the studies now, when we're performing them like through the FIM program or whatever the new program will be after this one expires, is there is a requirement that they do climate change horizons. So for us, they chose 20 and 200 year for the region, but they also had analysis performed for the 500 and maybe the 1,000 year. I can't remember, to be honest. So they do assess other scenarios. So they're looking at whether we're going to have more severe rain events or we're going to have major drought years. So they're trying to figure out what the drought portion, unfortunately, is still being worked on. So we're not doing that yet, but it's in the works for guidance for the future studies come in. Where if we're having a drought year, then what were the implications and then water reserves and things like that for human consumption and others.
The planet's already always experienced those two realms, right?
Yeah.
There's highs and lows in the
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, I was curious how the benchmark's gonna evolve.
Yeah, and through Madam Chair, there is some development on that front as well. We recognize that some of the summer storms are causing some frequent flooding. So those are not currently defined in the scheme of how we look at things. So so that is a developing area of science, I'll call it, for flood forecasting and for floodplain modeling. purposes. We've seen, and we had one hit actually Little Britain in 2000 something too, I think it was. And that was it was the same one that caused the Peterborough flooding, the first one. And very localized dumps and then gone. So there's been a lot of work trying to evaluate those, and those we've seen across southern Ontario quite a bit over the last 10 years.
Are they atmospheric rivers? Is that what they're, that's the new lingo?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're atmospheric rivers or just like, a weather pattern that just intensifies and then just drops in one area. But it certainly, it certainly is.
I'd really like to learn about that. What the differences are, because that seems to be some of the language coming forward. So, yeah. Okay.
Through the chair. So there's a time component to that too. So just the amount of rainfall isn't the critical matter. If it's stretched over a 24-hour period, it has a chance to bleed off. It's not a problem.
Exactly. And that's what some of these larger events are actually geared towards. They're geared towards an 8 or 12-hour event. So these events happen within the span of an hour and dump a whole lot of material, and it does overwhelm. So the other one's like a slow but intense bleed over time. And that's what the modeling's based on.
It's a little bit intense.
A little bit intense. Okay, all right, let's move on.
I have a quick light question. If you're mapping found karst in an area, I recognize it's mostly case, but somebody had a dwelling, somebody had a residence, and you noticed, all of a sudden, are they notified? Like they don't know that they're even sitting on something that's unsafe.
So when we identify it, we let them know that we have identified mapping, like it's still being looked at.
Yeah.
It's just not part of our regulation mapping because the certainty of the data that I was speaking about earlier. But we say you are within an area that has known karst, and then we usually ask for studies or like there's a bunch of things that we do.
Good, okay.
And just a little
Peter?
information on the karst. Right beside the karst is the proposed 500-acre gravel.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Actually
Do
approved
need-
now, just as haven't approved the public.
Yeah, it's been a fight, hasn't it? Okay.
Matt still has a bit of a presentation.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, go, keep going, Matt.
So as shown here, the meander belt is a potential path that a stream or river may take over several years of travel. This layer has been approved using the letter as well. It primarily was used to assess the bankful width of the water courses, which allow us to categorize the streams or the water courses better. So as you've seen, we performed the Novies Creek floodplain study. This will be included in our study as well. And then so is the Fenton Files self study that you had seen back in November. This will just be added to our regulation mapping as well. And one big update. This is the table that Kriya was referring to earlier. There's a significant changes in the areas that have occurred due to these updates. Overall, the table's a little misleading. It's not a sum of all of them because there's significant overlap with many of these features as water tends to connect to other paths. And also the erosion hazards tend to follow a lot of the water courses as well. So, or valleys. So the total amount is about an 8% decrease in regulated area, which we were regulating last year. And then this image here is kind of hard to see, apologies. The gray is showing what's not changing. The red is showing what's being reduced, and the green is showing what's being added with all these changes as one big whole picture.
Being added, okay. Okay, just looking pretty.
City.
Just a question, so just relating to what Eric asked, this green area, what happens to, what's there right now?
So on the mapping here, especially to the south, there's a lot of elevation change, dramatic elevation changes. So there's escarpments and other areas. So that's mostly the erosion hazard areas. Other areas are meander belt. Some of the areas have expanded a little bit, and our 100-year lake level is more accurate, so it also extends a little bit out in certain regions.
Okay.
I just have a comment. I know we've done Fenland Falls and I know other areas are in a floodplain. Are we going to be doing other areas going forward? Like Brock?
Yes, there is there's a couple of different water courses that we have our eye on. Ideally, we'd have floodplain modeling, similar to what Galen mentioned for our entire watershed, but due to the cost, it's just difficult. But there are several that we're looking at. We've been working with City of Kawartha Lakes on identifying a few of those, and
Burnt River was the major target because actually missing.
Yeah, Burnt River at the top, that's outside of our watershed. Within our watershed, even though we've identified the 100-year lake level and the closest approximation using LiDAR, what we'd really like to have around our lakes is actual floodplain modeling, engineered floodplain modeling. So what we have is we have a level and we're just picking a spot off a map, but that's not engineered. And we'd like something a little better for that and the connecting channels between the lakes. So to me, that's a big priority because there's so many houses in those areas, and that might just help out.
Thinking of Bob Cajun, it's on islands in between two lakes.
Yeah.
So, and I know it's in the floodplain, so I don't know if there has been any mapping of that ever.
There really hasn't been any mapping.
So I'll just bring that up for the.
Yeah.
Eric?
And lots of areas. We would focus in on where there's development first and then spread out to rural. One of the pieces that really struck me when we were doing the City of Kawartha Lakes floodplain mapping project, the 10 different areas, Emily Creek really stuck out to me in that the area that we had identified as a regulated area was very narrow compared to the actual floodplain. So having that extra information means that, well, one, as Galen mentioned, individuals don't have to do a study that would cost at a minimum $20,000 to do, and you can do it on an entire reach, so you can kind of see what the impacts are. So that's better for us. But it was also the extent of the flooding was so much different than what we actually regulate, and that was something for low gradient systems in particular. The floodplains that we've identified could be, or the regulated area that we've identified might be really small compared to the actual risk that's on the landscape. So,
Eric.
I'd like to once again embarrass myself publicly. I thought that by definition, the Conservation Authority's jurisdiction was the watershed.
Oh, yes.
And then you just said Burnt River and it's outside of the watershed, so I'm confused and I admit it.
Separate.
Not to be embarrassed at all, through you, Madam Chair. It is an interesting concept. We were born from municipalities. So there's a vote that's established in order to bring a CA into effect. And we were the last conservation authority in Ontario to be formed. So Otonabee, Cloca, Ganaraska, Toronto, and Simcoe already existed. So we filled in the gap in between. So even though we have a little bit of water that bleeds out to Turtle Hunter, to Simcoe at Balsam Lake, and we have Pigeon Lake that's split in half. And the other half goes to Otonabee. We don't have the fullest of watersheds. But then as we go north, it really, our entire watershed is the Source Protection Authority boundary, which pulls in Haliburton all the way up to Algonquin. Okay. And so there was a decision, actually initially when the authority was being formed, there were discussions with Haliburton County. And in the end, they decided that they didn't want a CA. So the vote for forming a conservation authority was defeated. And so that's where, trying to keep the watershed concept, we cut off at the major, at that point, outlets of the rivers. So that's where,
That's a good question.
yeah. the
But
limit right there.
it's amazing that a municipality can opt out of being a member.
In this case, it wasn't opting out, it was a matter of forming.
Yeah.
The conservation
Guess
authorities.
what you give it
That's, yeah.
And they've used us, Halliburton's used us to do some mapping for them. So, who knows, maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. Okay. Continue, please.
Well, that's.
Is that it?
Let's-
Oh, all right. Okay, all right.
We will be seeking resolution,
Yep,
the report regarding regulated mapping update for the purposes of compliance with the legislation changes and availability of updated technical data be received. And that, the drafted regulated mapping update be released for public notification for a minimum of 30 days. And that correspondence be sent to participating municipalities and appropriate stakeholders, notifying them of the mapping.
great. Well, thank you. Can I have a motion to Jerry and seconder? Priya?
Yeah, I'd like to be the seconder, but I'm just cognizant of the comment made by Lloyd about including the media in this, which isn't necessarily addressed in the,
I don't think you need to put that in a resolution.
okay.
That's just my feeling,
Maybe
but
the understanding of who all this is.
yeah. So, okay, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay. So, I guess we're on to 7.1. Permits issued by designated staff for April, not again.
Thank you. Begin, Madam Chair. As put on page 22 of the agenda, we issued 12 permits during March. Oh, my goodness, during April, 86% of these permits were deemed complete with the CALP timeline of that met the CALP timelines for review. 93% of these permits met the CALP timelines for issuing permits are the applications after deemed complete. As for the provincial guidelines, which we're now reporting on for the first time, we reviewed 93% of the permits within the 21-day timeframe and issued all permits within the 90-day period. We are seeking resolution that the section 28 permits issued by staff has been received. Thank you.
Great. Any questions of Matt? Okay, can I have a motion to receive Jerry and Eric? All in favor? Carried. Okay, 7.2 Planning Act, Environmental Registry of Ontario postings. Matt?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, again. As outlined in the board report on page 29, several postings on the ERO, which is the Environmental Registry of Ontario, have been made that are primarily focused on housing, and several may have potential impacts on the conservation authorities and how we regulate activities with the watershed. In response, we have participated with Conservation Ontario as they scheduled meetings that we attended, and were able to provide input for the preparation of a response letter that was drafted and sent to the province for their consideration. Overall, the changes could have positive effect on housing. However, as requested in the Conservation Ontario letter, some clarification was requested to ensure that the natural hazards are being considered and any potential amendments being made. We are seeking resolution of the staff report on the proposed legislation amendments in relation to the Planning Act as identified in the Environmental Registry of Ontario. Postings be received.
Okay. So a lot there. Any questions? Okay, can I have a motion to receive? Jerry, Peter, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. So we're on to 7.3 Lake Dalrymple Management Plan. Nancy.
Thank you. So today I'm here to give you an update on our Lake Dalrymple Management Plan. Lake Dalrymple is the 5th largest lake in the City of Kawartha Lakes, and this plan will be our 8th that we will be completing. Lake Dalrymple Management Plan, it's a 4-year project and it started in 2021. Lake Dalrymple is approximately 150 square kilometers in size and has 2 distinct lake basins separated by the narrow Brookfield Road. Upper Dalrymple lies south of the road. It's smaller and shallower and flows to the north into Lower Lake Dalrymple. Lake Dalrymple is a headwater lake, meaning it exists near the top of the drainage basin and does not have any major inputs of water from upstream sources. It's a unique lake to the Kawartha Lakes in that it exists through a natural process and is not regulated by any human man-made structures. The purpose of this project is to quantify the health of Dalrymple watershed and work with stakeholders collaboratively to obtain a better understanding of the lake pressures and determine priority management recommendations. The first 3 years, comprehensive monitoring took place on water quality, water quantity, and land use parameters, allowing us to develop a baseline documentation on the state of the lake, and we're going to use that as the foundation for developing those recommendations. Community engagement has been done throughout this entire process. A working group of 10 to 15 local people were established, meeting quarterly. We've had held 9 meetings to date. Group includes local residents, lake associations, shoreline residents, councillors, and municipal staff, including engagement from the Romero Township. We have hosted 2 public information sessions in 2022 in conjunction with the MNRF. 80 people attended, and several key issues and management opportunities were voiced to the staff. We also undertook engagement survey to identify public's key issues, lake values, and changes that they've witnessed on the lake over the years. We had 48 responses to that survey. For the lake values component, nature and habitat, water quality and quantity, and recreation were the top of the lists from that survey. The key issues were fishing, wildlife and habitat, and water quality quantity. And then for the changes that they've experienced, fish and hunting was one of them, water quality and quantity, and algae top of the list. So 2024 marks our final year of the project. We will be hosting another 2 open houses in August to provide public with an opportunity to offer feedback on our draft management recommendations. Also through the open houses, we'll be doing another online survey. Also, staff just completed the draft watershed characterization report. This is a technical publication that provides detailed background information on the current state of the aquatic and terrestrial ecosystem within the Lake Dalrymple watershed. All of our data collected is available online through our interactive water monitoring dashboard, and its watersheds are found to be in fair and good health. Through our findings, items of high priority that need management include invasive species, shoreline development, illegal dumping, land clearing, and fisheries. So our next steps, as we work towards the end of this year, is to finalize our water quality and quantity sampling. So we do that on a hydrological year. So we will be ending that at the end of May. Our monthly meetings with working group will continue throughout the summer to talk about our draft management recommendations. We will host 2 open houses in August, 22nd and 24th at the Carden Recreational Center. And then we will finalize the characterization report and management plan and bring it back to the board in November for approval.
Great.
And this is, I was told by my staff to tell you that they are very, very proud of this document. And it's the last final one, and they just want to say that they're really, really proud of it. So if you have a chance to read it, go for it. It's actually really, really good.
Yeah. Thank you. Nancy, thank you for that. So seeing it's a unique lake compared to the rest of them, would you say it's in better health because it's kind of at the top of the
I think just
area?
I think it's just like it's a natural occurring lake. So
Yeah.
I think that helps the situation. It's not highly developed. There's development on it, but it's not like some of the other Kawartha lakes that we see development really, really close together. Yeah, I think it's just the natural state of the lake is helping the water quality of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Jerry?
Through the chair, so with your historical data and what you've got to this point in time, do you see anything that, kind of speaks to has changed drastically, or is there anything of concern that you see other than the invasive species, which is just progressing, right?
I don't think it's so much concern, but water levels have been one of the key topics through the working group and through the last 3 years. They fluctuate a lot, and it's reported in the report on that.
Why?
Like I said, they're really concerned about like the illegal dumping. So there's a property over there that people have been dumping fill and garbage, and the residents are concerned about it. It is a legal matter that's being taken place right now. So there's that as well.
But just on that, so what's causing the variation of levels?
Just the natural occurrence.
Really?
Yeah,
Through
from
rain and,
groundwater and
Really?
precipitation and, yeah.
interesting. Okay. Any other questions, Nancy? Okay, can I have a motion to receive a report? Priya? Boyd? Do you
Harold,
have a question?
no,
Nope.
I was just gonna second that.
Okay, all in favor? Carried, great. Okay, so we're on to 7.4. CAO's report.
Yep, great. Thank you, Madam Chair. My report for the past month is in your hands there. And there's a couple of things just to highlight. Obviously, a lot of work going on in the authority and with all the work that the staff are doing. So although I'd like to speak to every single component, I won't. But regulation compliance in general has been a big theme. Tidying up some pieces from the previous legislative changes. There's been some improvements on the financial side in order to streamline the now budget process into financial statements and project reports. So that is something that is almost finished. Part of it's finished and the other part's still underway a little bit. But it's one of those ones where, you know, the implementation time certainly exceeds the time that it takes to just, you know, put in a certain element. It really does flow through the entire system. So and different checks and balances that are in play for, in this case, financial, but also on the reg side. A lot of effort has been put into updating a couple of documents. You've heard about the mapping updates, but we've also looked at the hearing bylaws. Those will come forward in June for you. And then the other one is the policy document, which has got a number of updates to it. So a lot of work going on that end, but we have completed our website updates and a couple of the internal forms that we have for making sure all the terminology is correct and in the right places. We also have our field season, which is well underway. So we've got all our staff, seasonal staff hired, and all the work is ongoing. Some of it is finished, which is great. So in a couple of Christie's program areas, there is the TD Friends of the Environment grant has been completed. That was all the plantings in Kawartha Conservation area. And involved, I think, 8 different planting sites, putting in pollinator gardens, I think 1,200 plus plants, 1,280 plants, native plants that were planted, and a bunch of trees and shrubs. So that's that'll be great. I think it was 160 community members were involved as well in that, a couple of different groups. So really great to have people out enjoying the area, making the disc golf you know, a little bit more, I'll call it environmentally friendly. It was just a field before. So translating it into some nice, you know, kind of demonstration projects. And good for, yeah, all the birds and bees and things like that. The other one is a large scale tree planting has been completed as well this year. So we planted, General Weed. You
could feel the tension.
Never expect you to.
Sure. You didn't plant a single tree. It's so almost 46,000 trees. So it's tremendous. I remember we had the stewardship strategy where it was actually developed before we had the large scale tree planting in play. And I note that the over counter sales was about 17,225. Our target is actually 21,000. So we're almost hitting that on the over the counter tree seedling sale. So this definitely puts it over. And there's a pretty impressive stat that was generated for looking at the span of the 10-year stewardship strategy. We're projecting out to not quite 300% of the target, but pretty close. So that's an impressive feat that's currently underway. So the other there's a couple other things that are kind of interesting happening in the area, which is the international plowing match. So there's a lot of efforts underway to be part of the committees and generate that, you know, not only with City of Kawartha Lakes, but also amongst the conservation authorities in the area. So we're involved in those efforts and look forward to that. It's coming up very quickly. So no, there'll be a lot of concerted effort to make sure we have a good showing on that. And the other one that's a really interesting one is we've had some staff. I think you've met her before, Melissa. She's a really cheery lady that has lots of bubbly enthusiasm. So they've her and Carolyn have applied for the knapsack program that City of Trent Lakes has. And so it's in case anyone doesn't know what it is, which we didn't until a little while ago, is you put forward a proposal and it's really promoting kind of tourism and development in the City of Kawartha Lakes. So you get to host an event, they tutor you in a sorts, kind of give you some pointers along the way and help you to create a successful event. So we have a glow in the dark disc golf event planned.
I saw that. That looks fun.
The two other items I'll mention is we do have the 20th anniversary of the Lake Scugog Environmental Management Plan too. So we do have some consultation underway to see what has changed. And that really is trying to figure out whether or not, since it has been 20 years, which is a good length of time, whether or not the plan itself needs to be updated or is it fine the way it is. So that's ongoing at this point. And the other one is, we're almost in the middle of summer, but just noted that we were still working with Trent Severn Waterway on calls to make sure that the flood season is totally over in the past month. So even though it seems like we're getting well into summer, there is still coordination going on that to get the water through. So that's a highlight of the updates, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Eric?
Just two quick things through you. Number one, I was gonna do the night frisbee golf. Now that I know all those new flowers are there, maybe I should I should just keep it to daylight for me. The way I play, I'll ruin all these beautiful gardens that were just planted. My question was actually just a statement. In your report, there was also an emergency preparedness piece to it, but that was part of it. And at our last council meeting, our last committee of the whole, Fire Chief did his presentation, his annual report, and encouraged thought at budget. Or he feels the city is at a stage where an emergency manager position would be taken seriously. So just something to keep an eye on this fall for you to be aware of.
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so I need a motion to receive that part, I guess. Okay, Jerry, Priya, all in favor? Carried. Great. Okay. Here. Okay, 7.5 correspondence. So I'm wondering where the region of Municipality of Durham report comes in regarding their GHG emissions plan. Is that here?
That is here, yes.
So I was like so impressed with that. You guys are way ahead of us. So I was just wondering if I could just get that part of it. So I can send it to our director.
Yep.
Because it was really impressive. Yeah, and we're at the point where we're just about to hire an environmental officer. So this would be great timing to have that.
Pages 70 to 86.
Yeah, yeah. It's quite impressive. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm missing what's impressive again?
The Durham environmental plan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, their climate change plan.
Oh, okay, I know about that.
Yeah, it's great. I was lots of data and yeah, very impressive. So that's just my comments. Anything else? Okay, can I have a motion to receive that correspondence? Eric and Jerry, all in favor? Carried. If Tracy or Lloyd want to make a resolution. Yeah, that's, okay, so, okay, that's 7.5. Okay, so we're on to 8.1 is the fee policy update. Mark,
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. This item came to you last month for a consultation period for 30 days. 30 days is up, no comments received, looking to endorse immediately. It incorporated changes to the appeal portion of the permitting and just clarified that all fees are possible for reconsideration.
you want to move that?
Sure.
Okay.
I just
great.
also want to say thank you for the time. It actually did help.
Yeah, okay, great.
It was a lot to digest.
Yeah, it is. Okay, moved by Eric, seconded by Peter. Any other questions? All in favor? Carried, great. Okay, so we're on to 9.1, letter of support for Sir Sanford Fleming College programming. So you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I can speak to it. This item was brought forward by actually Pat, who was looking at some of the cuts that were made to the programming. And some of those cuts are significant. They do impact the environmental side a lot. And so I know our chair was wondering whether or not there'd be support around the board to send a letter that would indicate our support for those programs. And so I did provide a couple of links. So I didn't want to interpret their language at all. So I provided a couple of links in that report to their news releases and the number of programs that were affected. But would note that we do have a couple of programs, the GIS programs. We actually have someone right now on staff that has been helping us on the GIS front. Ecosystem management, fish and wildlife, and another. And the environmental tech programs are all ones that we actively look at and almost anticipate some interest in. We've had some that one's not affected, and then the other one is conservation law, I believe, as well, where we've had some interactions. So some of those we interact on an annual basis. A few other ones are maybe every couple of years, but they do support the work that we do, and it's a great kind of push to get some work done. So. And the other great thing is that it provides a pool of candidates, most importantly for hiring, either for a seasonal pool or even full-time. So with those programs gone, that we have yet to see how that would impact us, but it might affect our kind of short-term and long-term aspects. So.
Do we have any statistics regarding Fleming? Is it the #1 environmental college in Ontario? Do we know? Do we have any statistics around that? Does anybody know? No. But I bet it is. Yeah. So college, not university. Yeah. So, okay. Oh, Eric?
Just to say that the city also at our last council meeting did the same. The City of Kawartha Lakes, we had a unanimous vote, I believe. And we've also sent a letter similar. And I do know, I can't remember her name, the NDP critic for Jill Dunlop, has expressed that these letters will have a significant weight added to her portfolio and her ability to challenge decisions like this or have the conversation. So this is great.
Yeah. Jerry?
Through the chair. So on your overview, Mark, what would you say were the determining factors for reducing these programs at Sir Sanford Fleming's level? Was it attendance or crowd?
So I think
Tricky question.
Yeah, I think they will have their own ideas around why that was. I can't speak to those. Those were part of the Board of Governors' decisions. But from what I read from their media releases that they put out, it's geared towards some of it is enrollment, some of it is the international student rate. And there's probably a few other things in the mix, realistically, but I think the key one that the media releases were hinging on was the loss of revenues from international students, which I believe was a federal decision.
So just to give you a little bit of context, I think in 2022, Frost developed, started a college in Toronto to bring on international students. And I think that that's the crux there. And that really affects our local college. So.
And then kind of just to explain the finances around it a little bit more is just from, anecdotal knowledge of international versus domestic, is the rate for international is much higher. So obviously getting that cut off and kind of segregated amongst the provinces means that you have less revenue coming in to offer programming. And I believe the rates for education were also frozen, and that might have been provincial.
Yeah.
So you're kind of cut between now two different directions from dealing with offering.
And a lot of these colleges were forced to do this because I think in Ontario is the lowest amount of funding compared to other provinces. So anyway, there are lots of different factors, so no, yeah. Anyway, I think we should at least put a letter in to show our concern. So can I have a motion that we do that? Kriya and a seconder, Eric?
Looks like Lloyd or Tracy.
Oh, yeah, they might want to get.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Get on the agenda.
Tracy, would you like to move that? Okay, and Lloyd second? Right on. Okay. Do you guys have any questions? No, okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. So we're on to 10. Any updates or reports from board members? Maybe we'll go this way.
Nothing really to report.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was a bit late today. We had an appreciation barbecue for
Oh,
the staff.
That's the fun part of the job.
Yes, for the,
Yeah.
yes, so I didn't want to miss that, pop and
Nice.
say hello, so
Yeah.
everybody was there. And Councillor Rock was there also, and he didn't make it, so he's there doing my job, I guess.
There you go. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Nothing
No,
really, just
no.
enjoying the meeting as always, and
Yeah.
learning a lot, so this is great, and I can assure you through my month, every month, the learning it really does impact my month as a counselor, it really does.
Great.
I'm gonna guess Pat's gonna talk about the community museum and maybe the boat thing too.
Go ahead. No.
I both, I didn't make it to both.
Pardon?
I didn't make it to both, so you go ahead.
Well, no, Jerry was at Le Boat and it was a fun day. That went to the opening of the canoe museum, which was really amazing. And also we went to the Le Boat. So if that comes to fruition, that's going to bring a lot of economic development to our area for sure. So, but anyway, Peter, did you have anything?
No.
Nope. Okay. Kriya?
I don't have anything, but I do have a small question. And it's just with regards to the demonstration and the gardens and the trees planted here. If I wanted to take that in, would I just go for a walk in the general area or?
Yeah, so all of the trees and shrubs that were planted as part of that project, as well as all of the native plants, were done along the disc golf course. But which is also a very walkable trail. Mark and I have both done it during our lunch hour. I think John regularly does it.
Where is the disc golf course?
So it starts just across the roadway at the parking lot there, and there's signage that indicates it's just off to the right-hand side. And then it just loops through up to the top of the escarpment, which you drive by as you're coming in, and then back down and around and back to the park.
How long does it take to walk the course?
Mark, depends, I guess. What?
You're wearing sandals?
Yeah. I would suggest maybe not doing it in flip-flops, but I would think probably about 40 minutes.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not a nice leisurely pace.
Can I come with the dog?
Absolutely, as long as your dog's on a leash.
Okay, I will come back for this. Certainly.
Excellent.
Look forward.
Maybe we should all join in a game.
Oh, that's
That would be awesome.
great.
That would be a fun kind of get together.
Competitive
Yeah.
game.
We've got discs here.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
Okay, so Tracy or Lloyd, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I do actually, Pat. I just want to say that tomorrow out in Ballyduff, there's the land trust celebration with Ralph McKim in his donation to Kawartha Land Trust from 2 to 4.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah. Ralph used to be on the foundation, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Alrighty, so,
And Lloyd has his microphone up.
No, I have nothing to say.
oh, okay, sorry, okay. So we're done there, so, we're going to move into close, so I need a motion to go into close, please. Okay, Eric and Peter, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay. Wait for a second.